Hello there and welcome to Dad Musings. This podcast is a continuation of the earlier one, which was about music education and my musings on how does one approach music education, because music is such a beautiful subject. It's something that in my experience most kids want to learn. They're fascinated by music. They have their heroes who are musicians, who are singers, and they all want to delve and maybe pick up that guitar or pick up that drum kit or pick up that keyboard or that violin and shred on it and be a rock star and create and sing and be adulated and be the center of attraction. And it's beautiful that they have these aspirations and they want to express themselves through music. But the whole discussion was on what do my kids feel about it, and we've had the conversation with them in the earlier podcast. Is it good? Is it bad? Am I making them run away from music? Am I scaring them? Are they getting bored of music? Is music as a formal form of education, is it bad or good for them? And we kind of got to hear their point of view. So if you missed the earlier podcast, my recommendation is why don't you go back and listen to it. The reason I've actually cut it into two podcasts is that one was kind of running over my self-inflicted timeline of approximately keeping my podcasts to 20 minutes. So I kind of have continued that onto this podcast. And in this podcast, we're actually going to talk about how you can bring in music in the form of education into your child's life. And what are the things that you can look out for when you are bringing it in as education. So without further ado, let's get into this podcast. Everything should be amazing. Kids are sweet and adoring, but so confusing what to do. Just listen to Dad Musings. Before we jump into the pointers that we should look out for while deciding what to do for our children's music education, there's something I have been musing about for many years now, and that is that I am a music educator. I'm a musician. I've performed thousands of shows across the world, and I continue to make music and I continue to perform and I continue to teach and teach teachers how to make music interesting, because music as a subject sounds like it's going to be awesome and great fun. But when somebody actually starts learning music, and if you've started learning music in your life, you'd probably understand what I'm saying. The end result sounds like absolute fun and chaos and adulation and awesome. But the journey to get there is not as fun as you might think it is. Because when you start learning music, it's like you're learning a whole new language. You're learning scales, you're learning notations, you're learning what goes into a song, and you have to learn how to make that brick before actually getting into looking at that beautiful looking building, right? And it's almost certainly not as exciting as it sounds. So for a teacher to teach this, imagine you are entering this beautiful world in your mind of what music should be, and when you walk into this Disneyland place that you have constructed in your mind, and then somebody says, no, don't pick up that guitar, don't look at all the beautiful things you'll be doing and the end result, let's open a textbook, let's look at the 5 notation lines, let's look at what a note means, let's look at and as a student, you're like, oh my God, this is going to be like another physics or a chemistry or a math. Assuming you don't like that, of course. I mean, there are a lot of kids who do like physics, chemistry and math. I am not one of those kids. But it suddenly becomes all very grey and blurry and like, oh my God, what am I doing here? So it's really important for a teacher to understand how to teach music and how to make it interesting and keep the magic alive. So a lot of my years have gone in training teachers on how you can make it interesting, how you can make that Disneyland alive, how you can bring it alive and put a huge smile on their face. And I don't know if you guys have ever gone through a class where at the end of the class, you feel like, oh my God, like, is the class over? Was it that short? and you actually look at your watch and see that 1 hour's gone. The truth of the matter is, when you are having fun, time flies. And when you're bored, every minute stretches out like it's 20 minutes. And you don't ideally want a student to feel that, because when they're having fun, they want to do more and more of it. So it's really crucial that a teacher understands this. And I've spent many years sitting with teachers and explaining to them and training them that it's there is a technique, there is a way of doing this, and once you get it right, it's fascinating, because once you finish a class and your student turns to you and says, "Sir, is that it? Is my class over? Can we do 10 minutes more? Can we do 15 minutes more? Oh, we're having so much fun." And it's such a lovely feeling, because no longer are you looking at your watch, no longer is your student looking at the watch. They're having such a great time. So all these actually come into the mix. Sorry, I'm just musing and rambling on, but all these actually come into the mix of a great class. And we hope that when you delve into music education, even for yourself, if not for your kids, that you find that teacher who gives you that great class. And here's the weird thing in all this. I do have fun teaching. I do teach a lot of kids, or I have taught a lot of kids. I've unfortunately stopped now because my schedule is not very regular, and I realize that because I'm traveling and doing shows and have recordings, I can't really maintain regularity every week, and that's affecting the child's learning curve. So I've stopped teaching, and I generally train teachers on how to teach. But in spite of the love I have for teaching, I can't teach my kids because it's just so tough for me to connect with them for various reasons. I guess the first one is from their perspective. Here's their father, who they have a lot of fun with. Of course, I'm an authority figure in their life, but I'm not the teacher authority figure in their life. I'm the father authority figure. So they find it really tough when I put on the teacher hat, and it's really, really tough to take instructions from me. But I think that's the smaller of the problem. The bigger of this problem is me. These are my kids. I understand them. I know them from the time they were born. I have a great inkling on their potential, of where they can go, of how lazy they may be, or how procrastinating they might be in certain situations, and what they can actually achieve. And if they've not done their homework, or they're playing something that I think is really at 10% of how they can play a particular piece, I go through angst, and I lose patience, and perhaps I get a lot more angry than I would with other kids. In fact, I'm a dream with other kids, but with my kids, it's, oh my God, why are they not getting this right? And it took me, I think, around 3 or 4 months to realize that, while I love teaching, and I do believe I'm quite good with most kids, I am terrible with my own kids. And before I I inflicted further damage on them, I just gave up. And my wife was not very happy about it, and she said, you teach the world, but you have 2 kids who are so talented, who are so good at music. And just to give you an idea of how good they are at music, here are some songs that Mishka, my daughter who's now 16, and Kahan, my son who's 11, have sung.
The elevated train by my window doesn't faze me anymore. The rattling screams don't disrupt my dreams. It's a lullaby in its way.
There's a fire starting in my heart, reaching the fever pitch, it's bringing me out the dark. Finally, I can see you crystal clear.
And as you can tell, that they love music, they're good at it, but I can't teach them. And that was a sad realization that dawned upon me, that I would be doing them more harm than good. And so I don't teach my kids music. Right, I'm rambling on and I'm musing on and on about music education, a topic very close to my heart. And we are now going to talk about, what are the points that you should look out for when considering getting a child a music education. So the points I would be looking at would be, which instrument would be right for your child? Which teacher would be right for your child? Should you go the classical or the more popular route of teaching? And of course, what would the inclination of your child be? So let's look at which instrument is right for your child. I personally believe, as an educator for over 20 years now, that a child's personality actually pushes them towards an instrument, or there is an instrument which actually could match the child's personality at the very early stages of learning. For example, I advise a lot of parents this, that, and a lot of parents do ask me, what do I expose my child to? Should it be the drums? Should it be percussion? Should it be a stringed instrument? Should it be the piano? Should it be a guitar? Should it be a violin or a flute? So each of these instruments will talk to the personality of the child at the very early stage of them having picked it up. For example, the guitar is a very, or any stringed instrument like the violin, is a much tougher instrument to pick up, because as you enter the instrument, there's a lot of work you have to do to get that first note right. For example, on a guitar, your left hand, if you are a right-handed person generally, you're fretting on your left hand. The finger has to hit the right fret, it has to hold the string down, it starts hurting. The right hand has to find the right string you are pressing and play, and that first ting note involves a lot of effort and hard work and concentration. That talks to a certain personality that your child has. If your child enjoys a challenge, if your child by nature is perseverant, then hey, this would be a better instrument to pick up at the word go. Of course, this doesn't mean that there are not other instruments that your child would love and enjoy playing, but if you had to pick on something that gives you an indication of what can my child start off with, I would look at that. If your child is not very perseverant by nature, does not like the challenge, likes to easily be able to get the sound that they want and start just doing music, then the keyboard or the piano is a far more easier instrument to enter into, because your fingers won't really hurt that much. You press a note, it's in tune, it gives you the right sound, and the gratification is almost instant. So when you look at which instrument to pick up for your child, maybe keep the child's personality in mind. If your child is very physically active, doesn't really enjoy sitting still, then the drums might actually bring out that energy and talk to the energy of your child, right? I also, of course, caution most parents, picking up the drums, have space, get great earphones to cut out the sound. But hey, that's secondary. The next thing, which teacher is right for your child? I think this is a very important question, because many of us look for teachers that are great musicians or know the subject matter well, and that's good. That's good. I don't discount that. But two very important factors. One, can they teach? This I cannot tell you how important it is to stress on, because I know many musicians, fabulous, very, very good and very high-end musicians, but they can't teach because they are so impatient. Their minds are already way above the stratosphere, and they are looking at complex scales and complex notations, and to start off with a 1, 2, this note, play, oh my god, I've actually seen them crumble and get very impatient with kids. So a high-leveled musician need not make a great teacher, or vice versa, right? So don't worry about how skilled they are as a musician. It's very important to understand how they are as a teacher. And references from your friends, I think, goes a long way. Or references from a trusted music shop or trusted sources goes a long way in your locking into a teacher. The second important thing, and this again is as important, it's okay if the teacher may not be so good as a musician, but if that teacher and your child forms a bond and the child enjoys spending time with the teacher, I would prioritize that as the most important thing, because that means that child is going to look forward to the class, that child is going to look forward to doing homework and pleasing that teacher because they bond and vibe with that teacher. and that child will start moving ahead. Of course, later on, once the child has fallen in love with music and is having a great time, if the teacher cannot now lift the child higher because the teacher's skill set is not so good, then you can look at changing the teacher. But at an entry level, you want your child to fall in love with the subject. So the teacher is important, needs to be right for your child. The third thing, classical versus pop. Classical is the foundation, the base. It teaches you the rules. So if you're doing Indian classical, Western classical, all that's really, really awesome to do, and you'll be a flying musician, especially if you are itching to break free from the boundaries. You have actually learned the rules correctly. But most kids, including my own, get terribly bored and hate it. They don't know why they're doing it. Like Mishka said, I want to sing songs that I know. Why am I learning classical? It's got nothing to do. Now, we know it has something to do with where she wants to go, but she doesn't know that. And it's torture for her. So again, I would recommend, if you were to, ask this of me very specifically, I would recommend, don't start off with classical. Start off with songs they want to learn. Let them learn those songs, let them enjoy it, and slowly start infusing them with the knowledge and the subject matter of classical. So to give you an example, I mean, of course, you may not be a teacher, but I won't start off a music class with a child saying this is a scale, and a scale comprises of these notes, and it comprises of these intervals between these notes, and the rule of the scale is this and that. Because I have lost my student, they are thoroughly bored, and it sounds like another math class that's going on. I would say, which song would you like to learn? Let's start off with that song. Now, I know that song is in a particular scale, I know the rules of that song, but I wouldn't tell the child that. Right? So, because they'll fall in love with it, they'll say, wow, this is so simple. And after they've learned the song, it'll be, did you know that this song is in this scale? And they're like, oh, that's cool, because I already know how to play the song. And now, wow, I played that song in the scale of G sharp. Oh, that's so cool. And that's how they further fall in love with music. So if you're thinking about teaching them the foundations of classical versus popular, I'd say start off with popular, move to classical. Now, of course, these are not hard and fast to my mind. There are some kids who, no matter what you do, put a brick wall in front of them, they will walk right through it because they love music and nothing can stop them. For them, classical will do wonders. It will open up their minds and they would fall in love with it even more, right? So it depends on the personality. And the last point was exactly related to this. See what their inclination is. If my child loves music but doesn't want to learn music, I wouldn't push them towards learning music, because I don't want them to start having a love-hate relationship, moving into hate more than love, because I force them to walk a formal path on the subject that they love, right? So just be in touch. Even when they're learning something, are they having a good time? Is it fun? Do they continue to have a good time? Often I would tell a child who has come to me and said, sir, I've been learning music for the last 3 years and it's really beginning to bore me now. I'd say stop, take a break for a year. Just refresh yourself. Why don't you just write songs now, apply all the knowledge of music you've learned in these last 3 years and write me a song. And I would sit with the child, we'd do lyrics, we would break down some chord structures with scale, the form of a song, and we'd start applying the theory into practice. More often than not, that motivates them to do more music. I would look out for venues where they can perform at, jam sessions where they can perform at, because that is now going to regurgitate the love for the subject that they had when they started off. But take a break or shift focus from music into learning music to performing music, and then come back to learning later. And these are the various things you can do to actually keep the love for music alive. But as you heard, music is very important scientifically, and forget scientifically, soulfully. I think no matter what you're 80 years, you're a pilot, you're an accountant, you're an exporter, you're a teacher. We all love music. It de-stresses us. It keeps a smile on our face. It sets our soul aglow. They definitely should have some form of music in their lives, our kids. And if we can do that successfully, we are making them far more calmer, happier adults in the future. Okay then, as the podcast goes, these are my musings, not necessarily solutions, but thoughts that I have and possibly you do too. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on my musings, and if you have any topics that you'd like me to muse on, please share them with me and maybe I'll get musing on those topics over here. You can write to me through my website, which is chin2bhosle.com. I'll spell that out. CHIN, the number 2, chin2, Bhosle, BHOSLE.com. That's chin2bhosle.com. And yep, let's together make this world a better place for musing, and let's make this world a more amusing place. Oh my God, what is happening? Our kids have got us balding. Are you in the dark? Need some light? Subscribe to Dad Musings.